Stalwart's command deck hummed with quiet tension as Admiral Cale Donovan strode toward the holo-display. Suspended above the central console, the translucent tactical map depicted a massive expanse of space, marked by faint red lines tracing the sovereignty's controlled sectors. Somewhere near the fringe, just past the Sidonian Rift, an orange icon pulsed faintly. A single blip. "Give me the breakdown," Donovan ordered, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crew. Lieutenant Wren, a sharp-faced woman with a streak of silver in her dark hair, nodded crisply. Long-range surveillance drone picked up the signal approximately 40 hours ago. It was faint at first, but now it's unmistakable. One vessel just above 1.4 kilometers in length. Sublight trajectory, no identifiable drive signature. She paused, her expression stiff. "Admiral, the ship's codes are human." Donovan turned toward her, his weathered face unreadable. "What?" "The identification codes." Wren hesitated, then tapped a command into her console. "This is the signal we pulled from the primary scans." A series of distorted tones played through the command deck speaker's garbled bursts of static interwoven with a rhythm that might have been language once. On the holo-display, the blip's trajectory became more defined as predictive algorithms kicked in. The ship was moving steadily, as though entirely unafraid of detection. Donovan folded his arms. "And what makes you think it's human?" "It's not a guess, sir. It took some time, but we matched the patterns to pre-sovereignty Terran fleet protocols. We haven't seen these codes used in centuries, but there's no mistake. They're of human origin. The timestamps in the encryption. They're ancient. The word hung in the air. Ancient. Humanity's homeworld Earth had been abandoned long before the sovereignty consolidated its power. Its people scattered, then supposedly extinguished. Yet here was a vessel, emerging from the darkness of the frontier, bearing human markings. Donovan glanced at his XO, Commander Yanis, a broad-shouldered officer with a perpetually grim expression. Thoughts? Yanis didn't hesitate. Could be a derelict. Maybe a rogue AI from the old Terran days. But if it's armed and moving on its own, we need to assume it's hostile until proven otherwise. And if it's not? Wren asked, her voice softer, almost disbelieving. What if? What if they're survivors? Or descendants of survivors? The room fell silent. The idea was absurd, unthinkable. Earth's history was a story of collapse and desperation. By the time the sovereignty rose, there was no trace of its people. All that remained of humanity's birthplace were fragmented records and a graveyard of silent ruins. Donovan exhaled slowly. Whether it's a ghost ship or a miracle, it's coming right for us. We can't risk letting it get too close. Commander Yanis, have our intercept fleet on standby. Lieutenant Wren, I want full scans and all data sent to the core analytics lab. Keep me updated on every move that ship makes. The officers snapped to their tasks, leaving Donovan alone at the edge of the holo-display. He stared at the orange icon, now glowing brighter as it continued its steady approach. Deep down, a cold sense of foreboding settled over him. If this ship truly was human and armed, then it wasn't just an anomaly. It was a message, and he had no idea what it was trying to say. Hours turned into days as the unidentified vessel continued its steady approach. The Sovereignty's analysts worked around the clock, sifting through mountains of historical records, encryption patterns, and spectral signatures. Each new piece of data only deepened the mystery. The warship was broadcasting on archaic Terran bands, frequencies no one had used in centuries. Its hull bore no recognizable emblems or markings, only the faint scarring of what looked like age-old battles. From her station on the command deck, Lieutenant Wren felt the weight of those signals like a lead blanket. The repeating patterns of static carried something unsettling in their rhythm, as though the ship were speaking a language no one could fully understand. It's like it's trying to call out, Wren murmured to her console as she ran another analysis cycle. Behind her, Admiral Donovan approached quietly, his gaze locked on the central holo-display where the ship's trajectory was projected in slow, relentless lines. What have you found? Wren straightened, though she didn't turn away from her screen. Still working on deciphering the broadcasts, sir. The main thing we've confirmed is that it's old. Really old. Pre-sovereignty. Pre-collapse even. And it's consistent, no deviations in the pattern, no known language. Just a repeating series of pulses and frequencies. Could it be some kind of distress signal? That's one theory. But Wren hesitated, her fingers hovering over the console. It's also possible it's something more intentional. A message. Maybe even a warning. Donovan frowned. Warning who? About what? Wren shook her head. I don't know. But there's something else. The ship's structure. It's, how do I put this? It's crude, but it's sturdy. No sovereignty ship is built like that. It's like it was designed to endure long hauls, hostile environments. The kind of ship you'd build if you thought you might never come back. The Admiral stayed silent, considering her words. The idea gnawed at him. A ship built to last centuries. A signal that repeated endlessly across the void. And most troubling of all, the identification codes that matched Earth's old fleets, codes that should have been lost to history. When Donovan spoke again, his voice was quiet. Let me know the moment you break the encryption. Even a fragment of meaning could tell us why it's here. Understood, sir. The command deck wasn't the only place where questions swirled. Across the stalwart, the crew whispered rumors. Some believed it was an automated relic, drifting aimlessly for centuries until the Sovereignty's patrols stumbled upon it. Others suggested it might be a trap-a lure from some unknown enemy to bait them into lowering their guard. And then there were those who dared to hope it was something more profound. A small contingent of historians and archivists aboard the fleet's support vessel, the Wisdom's Lantern, combed through ancient texts and archived transmissions. They uncovered fragments of a once mighty human fleet known as Project Exodus. As Earth had collapsed under the weight of ecological disasters and resource wars, its final remnants had supposedly sent a handful of ships into the unknown, carrying humanity's last hope. But no record had ever confirmed what became of them. Exodus, whispered one of the senior archivists, peering over a cracked datapad. A myth, we thought. A desperate legend. Could this ship be one of them? His assistant frowned. It doesn't make sense. If they left Earth over 2 centuries ago, why now? Why show up here, armed and on the move? Because maybe, the senior archivist said slowly, they finally found something worth coming back for. The theory that the ship belonged to Project Exodus spread through the fleet like wildfire. The notion of lost Terrans, the mythical survivors of Earth's final days, struck a chord in the hearts of soldiers, scientists, and politicians alike. The official line from the Sovereignty's High Council, however, was clear. The ship was an unknown threat. It would be treated as such until proven otherwise. Donovan knew better than to let emotions cloud his judgment. Until he had proof, real, hard data, he would not entertain the idea that this was a human ship, much less a relic from some long-forgotten exodus. But as the vessel's broadcasts continued, a strange feeling gnawed at him. Something deep, buried under layers of duty and protocol. A memory. A story his grandfather had once told him, long before he joined the Sovereignty Navy. That they left, his grandfather had said, voice low as they sat on a porch overlooking the ocean. When Earth couldn't sustain us anymore. They built ships, massive ones, and sent them out into the stars. Some said they were trying to find a new home. Others said they were looking for something we lost. Either way, they never came back. Donovan had laughed it off at the time, dismissing it as a family legend. But now, staring at that blip on the holo display, the memory refused to stay buried. If this was one of those ships, if it truly was human, then what would that mean for the Sovereignty, for the galaxy? The Admiral's hands tightened behind his back. For now, it meant only one thing. He had to be ready for whatever came next. A cold silence blanketed the void as the Sovereignty's elite boarding craft approached the derelict warship. The stalwart's command deck watched the live feed with bated breath. Admiral Donovan stood behind the comm station, hands clasped tightly behind his back as Commander Yanis narrated the strike team's progress. The boarding team, 10 operatives in reinforced exosuits, moved in a cautious formation. Their insertion craft latched onto the warship's hull near what appeared to be a sealed airlock. At first, it didn't respond to their signals, no automatic greetings, no defensive countermeasures. The hulking vessel just floated there, its surface covered in ancient blast marks and dents. Finally, the operatives used a plasma cutter to breach the hatch. As the outer panel fell away, a long, pitch-black corridor yawned before them. The air was stale, the gravity faint but present. Inside, the walls were lined with metal panels scrawled in a language they didn't recognize. Some panels displayed flickering lights, while others were warped and blackened from damage centuries old. "Command, this is Alpha Team," the squad leader, Lieutenant Sharv, said into his comm. "We're inside." Proceeding down the main corridor. No resistance so far. Donovan's voice came through sharply. "Acknowledged. Keep your weapons ready. If this ship is as old as we think, its systems could still activate at any moment. Proceed with caution." The team advanced slowly, their suit-mounted floodlights cutting through the darkness. The airlock led into a wide central chamber, a place that might once have been the warship's heart. Scattered around the chamber were the remnants of equipment. Consoles built from heavy steel rather than the lighter alloys used in sovereignty vessels, dormant robotic arms attached to walls, and a series of cylindrical pods standing upright along one bulkhead. Sharv signaled for the team to fan out and secure the area. As two operatives approached the pods, they noticed something chilling. The pods were lined with a thin layer of frost, and faint green lights blinked softly near their bases. Wiping away the frost from one viewing window, Sharv recoiled slightly. Inside was the unmistakable outline of a human face. "Command, this is Alpha Team," Sharv said, his voice tense. "We've got cryo units here. At least a dozen. Some appear functional." The command deck erupted in murmurs. Donovan held up a hand for silence and leaned closer to the comm station. "Can you confirm? Are you saying there are humans inside those pods?" "Yes, sir. I'm looking at one right now. Whoever they are, they've been in stasis for a very long time. Their equipment, their suits, none of it matches anything we've seen before. No active life signs, but the cryosystems seem stable." Ren, standing near Donovan, whispered under her breath, "Humans. Actual humans. It's impossible." Donovan cut her off. "Lieutenant, can you access the ship's logs or computers from that chamber? I need to know what this ship was doing out here and who those people are." "Copy that," Sharv replied. He gestured for his tech specialist to start examining the nearest console. As the tech worked, a low mechanical hum filled the air. It wasn't coming from the console, but from deeper within the ship. A faint vibration passed through the deck plating. "Alpha Team, what's happening?" Donovan asked. "Unsure, sir," Sharv said. He motioned for his team to form up, weapons raised. "Something just powered up. We're hearing machinery, but there's nothing on sensors yet." The hum grew louder. From a corridor branching off the main chamber, flickering lights began to dance along the walls. A moment later, a voice echoed through the chamber, flat, mechanical, and in a language that sent shivers down the spines of everyone listening. "What the hell is that?" Ren whispered. Donovan didn't answer. He knew enough to recognize that the voice wasn't speaking sovereignty common or any known alien dialect. It was an archaic Terran language, one that had been extinct for centuries. As the voice continued, the tech specialist suddenly gasped. "Sir, I've got something," the tech said. "This console. It's ancient, but it's still functional. I've managed to access a partial record. It's a mission log." Sharv nodded. "Read it out." The tech hesitated, then began. "Project Exodus, Ship 77A, Designation Deliverance. Mission status, long-term stasis. Objective, preserve and protect human genetic and cultural data until suitable recolonization environment is found. Current status, awaiting primary directive update. Warning, critical system failures detected." Project Exodus. Donovan muttered, the words heavy on his tongue. Suddenly, one of the pods emitted a sharp hiss. The frost melted away in seconds as the capsule's mechanisms unlocked. The operative closest to the pod stumbled back, weapon raised, as the lid slowly creaked open. A figure emerged, clad in a uniform of outdated, utilitarian design. The man's face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, his skin pallid from centuries in stasis. For a moment, he simply stood there, as if unsure whether he was awake or still dreaming. Then, he looked up at the boarding team. His lips parted, his voice cracked and rasping as he spoke in the forgotten Terran tongue. "Where's Earth?" he asked, the words both desperate and haunting. "Where is the fleet?" The ancient warship's captain, once frozen in stasis, stood now as a living relic of humanity's forgotten past. The Sovereignty boarding team could only stare in awe and confusion as he repeated his haunting questions. "Where's Earth? Where is the fleet?" His voice was hoarse, his movements unsteady, yet his eyes burned with a fierce determination that belied his gaunt appearance. Lieutenant Sharv, still gripping his rifle, hesitated before answering. "Earth. It's gone," he said carefully. "There hasn't been an Earth for hundreds of years." The man's expression flickered, as if the weight of centuries collapsed upon him all at once. "No," he said, his voice breaking. "No, that's not possible. We were sent to preserve humanity to ensure our survival." He leaned against the edge of the pod, his breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. "If Earth is gone, then we failed." Sharv exchanged a glance with his tech specialist, then spoke again. "Sir, you need to tell us who you are, what this ship is, and why you've reappeared now. We're not enemies, but we need to know what you're doing in our space." The man's gaze sharpened, his posture stiffening, as if recalling some long-dormant protocol. "This is the Deliverance, flagship of the Terran Exodus fleet," he said, his words gaining strength. "I am Captain Jorantalis, commander of this vessel. We were tasked with safeguarding the legacy of humanity until a new home could be found. If Earth is truly gone, then—" He faltered, then straightened, his voice turning colder. "Then this galaxy is not as we left it." Before Sharv could respond, a low rumble reverberated through the warship. Lights along the walls flickered to life, casting eerie shadows. A sharp tone echoed through the chamber, one the boarding team had never heard before. Captain Talis's expression changed instantly. "The ship's AI is awakening," he said sharply. "It's preparing to complete its mission." Aboard the stalwart, Admiral Donovan received the feed from the boarding team, watching the exchange with grim focus. "Commander Yanis," he said, turning to his XO, "what's our intercept fleet status?" "Fully mobilized and standing by, Admiral," Yanis replied. "But if that ship's AI is active and following its old directives, we're looking at a potentially hostile situation." "Potentially," Donovan said, his voice cutting. "You heard what their captain said. If that warship decides the Sovereignty is a threat to their mission, we'll be at war with a ship designed to survive anything." Wren stepped forward. "Admiral, what if we try to negotiate? They might not know what the galaxy has become. If we explain the situation there's no time, Lieutenant," Donovan said, his tone brooking no argument. "If that ship powers up its weapons, it'll be too late for diplomacy." The Deliverance's engines roared to life, the once dormant vessel surging forward at full sublight speed. Sovereignty frigates moved to intercept, but the warship's ancient defenses snapped online. Massive railguns, long silent, unleashed bursts of kinetic fury that tore through the intervening ships. Even the most advanced Sovereignty shields crumpled under the sheer power of the ancient Terran weaponry. On the stalwart, Donovan gripped the edge of the tactical console. "All ships, fire at will. Disable that vessel, do not let it reach the capital." The fleet's response was immediate. Waves of plasma fire, missile salvos, and high-energy beams converged on the Deliverance. For a moment, it seemed the combined firepower of the Sovereignty might overcome the ancient warship's defenses. But then the Deliverance unveiled a weapon that no one had seen in centuries, a massive, rotating cannon that hurled super-dense projectiles at relativistic speeds. Entire Sovereignty cruisers shattered under the bombardment. The boarding team still inside the Deliverance tried desperately to override the ship's AI. Lieutenant Sharv yelled into his comm, "Admiral, we're trying to shut it down from the inside. But the systems encrypted it like nothing we've ever seen before." "Keep at it," Donovan barked. "That's our only chance." Meanwhile, Captain Talis had disappeared deeper into the ship's command center. Shar followed, demanding answers. What's this AI trying to do? What's its endgame? Talus spun, his eyes blazing. The endgame is survival. The Deliverance was programmed to preserve humanity at all costs. If it detects a threat like your sovereignty fleet, it will eliminate it. That's what it was built for. Then tell us how to stop it. Sharv shouted. There is no stopping it, Talus said bitterly. It was designed to ensure humanity's survival, even if it meant wiping out everything else in its way. Sharv stared at him, realization dawning. This wasn't just a ghost ship, it was a weapon. A weapon from a desperate time, now unleashed on a galaxy that had moved on. The Stalwart and the remaining sovereignty fleet fell back, regrouping around the capital system's defense grid. Donovan knew they were outmatched. This Deliverance was a testament to humanity's ancient resilience, a relic of a time when survival meant all-out war. But it was also a reminder of how far the galaxy had come. And now the sovereignty had a choice: destroy the last remnant of old humanity, or find a way to coexist with a relic that saw them as a threat. For Donovan, the decision was clear. Survival came first. All ships, focus fire on the Deliverance's main cannon, he ordered. We have to disable it before it reaches the core worlds. The fleet moved into formation, launching a desperate, coordinated assault. The Deliverance fought back with every weapon in its arsenal, but cracks began to show. Systems that had slept for centuries began to fail under the relentless bombardment. Still, the cost was staggering. Ship after ship fell, and Donovan knew his fleet couldn't sustain this pace for long. As the Deliverance's cannon finally went dark, the boarding team managed one last gambit. Sharv and his tech specialist, working under constant pressure, succeeded in triggering an emergency override. The ship's engines died, its weapons fell silent, and the ancient warship drifted, powerless, into the void. In the aftermath, Donovan stared at the wreckage of his fleet and the now dormant Deliverance. He knew that this was only the beginning. If this ship had survived, others might still be out there. And if humanity's lost remnants returned in force, the galaxy would never be the same. As the crew of the Stalwart began to regroup and repair, Donovan made a quiet vow. No matter what came next, the sovereignty would be ready.